Hi, my name is Thomas Brooks and welcome to this video on ProjectXpert 2017. ProjectXpert is our project management tool that can be used in conjunction with EstimatorXpress or used as a standalone package. Before we continue, just a few things as to why you would use a planning tool such as ProjectXpert, and it generally boils down to thinking ahead. When you're running a business, you want to be able to identify potential problems and consider alternative methods, either bring in an extra labour or extending build phases. It allows you to establish a time required for a project, allowing you then to work on the following project or have them in conjunction, as you'll be able to see where phases start and where phases end. You've got it all planned out, making efficient use of your resources, so when your bricklaying gang is finished on one project, they can move over to the next one. With this as well, you can produce a program to monitor progress against. So you've got your phases as you're working for the project. If you're on schedule, nothing to worry about. If you start falling behind, then you can update your phases to today's date, pushing everything else along, seeing how it's affecting your baseline, and if it's going to impact upon your completion date. As this goes through and you're updating the dates, you can keep track of your cash flow forecast for the project. So you can see if the delays on the project are going to impact on your cash flow, and also if it's going to impact on your material and labour scheduling as well, which with the export back to EstimatorXpress allows you to produce those reports. So I'm going to go into my estimates within the EstimatorXpress software. I'm going to open up the project I want to manage, in this case New House 1, Job 65. Now I'm in the job, I can go to my Chart tab and confirm everything within the project is how I want it to be. So the important thing is that there are no unneeded phases included in this Gantt chart, so I can use the Remove Unused Build Phases button to remove those I don't need, and I can edit the bar chart down here to make sure that they are in the correct order. I can also make sure that the job start date is correct, so I currently have June the 5th. If I'm happy with that, I can close out of the estimate. Select Due to Start. You have to close out the estimate, as it will then save the file in the background for that estimate, meaning then ProjectXpert can import and open it up. Move over to ProjectXpert now. I'm going to go to the Tools tab, and I'm going to go to the EstimatorXpress icon saying From, so Import from EstimatorXpress. Clicking that gives me a menu with the estimates that I want to bring in. I can select Job 65. I can bring in multiple estimates at once, but in this case I'm only going to bring in the one. Click OK, and that estimate is now brought in for me. What I can do, give that a nudge, there we go, to bring it up to that point there. I can then start going through managing this project. To run through what we can see on screen now, on the left hand side here we have the entry table. This is a list of the build phases that has been brought through from EstimatorXpress. Below this we have the resources table. This includes labour, material and plant, but we will be mainly focusing on the labour. Over on the right here we have the Gantt chart itself, and this time we can also see the links between the phases. And on the bottom here we have the histogram, which we'll be using in conjunction with the resources table to show us where we have shortfalls and need to manage our project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the labour subheader here. What this will do is it will show me the blue bars where I have adequate time allotted and red bars where I have a shortfall. So as I set this project up, I've got a full 5 days there for demolition. It could be that I need to just shorten this down because I don't need the full 5 days. I can take that down to 2, and that's okay. I can do this by hovering over the end of the phase, and you'll see that you have a black bar capping there with an arrow. Left click and hold, and I can bring this down. I can also move whole phases by hovering over them in the middle. You get the square icon or the rectangle with an arrow on each end. If you left click and hold, you can drag that across. So I'm going to move the footings, oversight and slabbing all to the first week. What I also see with this there is that I have a conflict of labour time. If I go down to my ground workers, I can see that I don't actually have enough ground worker time allotted within that week to complete the tasks as required. So it may be that I need to move the footings over to the following week. I can come along to my drains, click on labour there as well, so I have my overview of all my labour tasks, and I'm going to bring this down to 5 days. I have no conflict in labour there, so I can say 4 days, 3 days, and as I bring down to 3 days, I can still see that there is a little bit of red there. Now that could be passable for what I need to do, and say they just need to work a little bit more promptly on site, or I can give them 4 days and have the benefit of the doubt. Now that I've changed that item there for the drains, I have a full week available that I can bring the brickwork shell back. So I'm going to hover over that item there and just drag it back manually. What I'm going to do as well, I'm just going to hover it slightly over the weekend. As you can see, they're indicated by the grayer lines. As I do that and release, it will say you have dragged an activity project start on a non-work period. The activity will be scheduled for the next working period, effectively the next Monday. It's also going to say I'm moving a key task here, so a predecessor task prevents so-and-so from being scheduled earlier. I can modify the link and move that back there. I still have, within my histogram below, lots of red showing. What this means is that there is not enough labour time allotted to complete the task as what's been estimated within EstimatorXpress. I can come down here and say, is that bricklayer? That is a bricklayer task that's showing red. Is it bricklayer and mate? Yep, 2 bricklayers and a mate effectively have only half the time available than they will actually need. Any issues with the bricklayer? Nope. Bricklayer and labourer, that's fine. So I'm going to go to the bricklayer and mate again and make a decision. I can either extend this phase by another 3 weeks to allow enough time to complete this job, or if I am pushed for time on this project, I can look elsewhere and find an additional gang to work on another part of the project. So it could be one doing brickwork, another one doing the blockwork on the inside. If I've made that decision, I can come along to the available box here and say I have 2 gangs available, and that then eliminates that issue. So I've made a decision there, I have managed the project. I'm going to come back to labour here now. So I can once again see the overview of my labour and just move some of these items around. So I'm going to take my first floor joists, move it back a week in correspondence with everything else. I'm also going to bring that down to 3 days, see if that's timed there. So okay, 2 days, that's fine. 1 day, introduced a deficit there, so I'm going to bring that back to 2 days and leave that as 2 days. I'm going to have some timber framing, I'm going to bring back a week as well. I'm going to set that down to 2 days, that's fine. 1 day, they can do that bit of timber framing. It's only a small task that just needs to be fitted in there. You'll also see that the timber frame has no links allocated. That's because it's not part of the critical path. That can be done any point along here without affecting anything else. But items such as the brickwork shell, down to the roof structure, down to roof tiling, down to joinery, they form what is known as the critical path. The roof structure can't be finished before the brickwork shell is finished. The roof tiling can't start before the roof structure is finished. These items, if they start falling behind, will start affecting the rest of the project. If the timber frame item on this project here doesn't get completed on time, it can be done the next day and it won't impact on the overall project. But if your brickwork shell falls behind a day, it will make the roof structure move behind a day. I'm going to move that roof structure back to this week and see what the time is there. So 4 days, that's not going to work. They need a full 5 days to complete that. Go back to my roof tiling, bring that back to that week there. I've overlapped on a weekend, that's okay. And I want to modify this as well because it's part of my critical path. Change my working days down to 5. There we go. That's more than enough time. If I try 3, how does that work? 2, or even 1. Not enough time in 1 day to do that. As time allowed for 2 days for what they're going to be doing. That could be nice, and say 3 days for the roof tiling. Moving along as well, I can then start moving along the rest of these phases. So as I'm progressing through this project, I'm just bumping things back, making sure that I've got the right amount of time allowed for each phase, and not too much more. So I'm going to quickly fast forward now and finish off these phases. As I come to the plastering, I'm going to use this one as an example again. If I bring this back down to 10 days, I have a deficit. So I'm going to make that 12 days, and that works again. as I get to my internal decoration. I'm nearing the end of the project setting this out. I'm going to bring this back to the end of fitting out. Reduce that down to 2 weeks again. I can see that again I have a deficit. Set that to 11 days. Not enough. 12 days. 12 days is enough there to complete the internal decoration. The external decoration back. And shorten that down to 3 days. And that fits within the end of that week. I can bring the completion back. This is where you can decide whether or not you want to have completion 3 weeks after what your supposed finishing date is, giving you time to overrun if required. This is your project management decision making coming in. If you do know that there is a deadline, you can use this completion as the deadline item. I'm going to set this now for 2 weeks to give myself time for overrun. I'm going to set the completion duration as 0, and this sets that as an endpoint. That project is now laid out. I'm just going to save this project. Save as. I'm just going to overwrite new house 1. Once that's saved, I'm going to go to my Progress tab. I can select Store Baseline. By storing the baseline, I use this now as what I want the project to be. As I work through the project, as I'm monitoring it, if I'm falling behind, I can see there how much I've deviated from my original plan. We can give an example of this now by changing the project details and setting today's date as July 10th. Click OK. So now I've set my today's date as July 10th. The red line there is indicating that's today's date. What I'm going to do now is go to my views. I'm going to go to my table and set my progress table. And I'm going to set my completions as we go through. I'm going to set my brickwork shower as being 34% complete. What we can see now is that we are falling behind on the brickwork shell. So planned by this date I should be about 66% complete. I'm actually only 34% complete. What this means now is I'm going to have to update this job, and it's going to affect the rest of the build phases. And I can see how this happens when I go to reschedule tasks. I still have 66% of the job still left to do for the brickwork shell, which has put me a whole week behind, which has moved the roof structure along by a week, which has moved the roof tiling along to the next week, which has moved our joinery along 3 days. By eliminating that gap after the roof structure, my roof tiling's coming in straight after, so I've made up a couple of days there by leaving that gap as a bit of a security net. So by the time I come down to the plastering, I'm still 3 days behind. Internal fitting out 3 days behind, and my external decoration has been bumped along to the next week. But I've still got a week and a half before my actual completion date. So if my project continues on time from this point onwards, I'm still okay. If I have any more delays, that starts putting me back by another week. I'm looking to either be in trouble myself, possibly incur some fines for being late on completion, or having to possibly get more labour in to bump along some of these other phases. It could be that if I start falling behind, I might get in another plastering gang to help do all the rooms plasterboarded out faster, so then I can reduce the labour time on that, bring the phase down, and reduce the chances of me overrunning past my completion date. What I can do with this now as well is that if I was managing this project and I was using EstimatorXpress to use my reports for material order schedules or my labour scheduling, I can use the Tools tab and the To button to save this back to my estimate, so I can then print the reports off with these new adjusted dates. I've returned the project back to its previous state. I've planned it out. I've not yet saved the baseline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can bring in an additional project that's already been worked on, so you can have them running side by side. To do this, I'm going to go to the menu button at the top. I'm going to go to Merge Projects. I'm going to go to the CS Project Data Exchange. At the bottom, type, I'm going to select ProjectXpert 2017 and select my new house 2, click open, and in this now I have 4 options, and I want to select option 4, which is merge the new resources and calendars into the current list. Once that's done, you'll see that below I now have new house 2 job 66 showing below. And what it's also done is introduced some red lines onto my histogram below. What this means is that I've introduced some new conflicts. Now I've got this job starting 3 weeks after job 1. And for the most part, that works out just fine. I've got no conflict on my demolition foundations and my oversight and slabbing, nor do I have it on my footings or drains. But when I come to my brickwork shell, I can see that there are some conflicts arising. Now what this may mean is that on the job 2 foundations of certain slabbing and footings, there might be some bricklayer tasks. I can look at this there and see what's going on, see which gang it might be. So it's the 2 bricklayers and a mate again, and if I look at this in detail, I can see that on those days there are footings occurring. What this may mean is that I need to take one of the 2 gangs I've got running on this brickwork shell up here and move it down to the footings to complete them. Now that's only got 1 gang set to that, so if I extend this by a couple of days to allow that gang to be off, I know there's red showing, but I know I've pulled them off that there to put onto the footings. I can add a note to this by going to the Edit tab, selecting Text, pulled gang from house 1 to complete footings, added that onto my chart. But I can also see that there is some other conflict arising further on here. So those 2 days I've added onto that project phase is now clashing with my brickwork shell here. So what I can do is I can move this along. I could move it along the 2 days, and I no longer have that conflict. But it's also moving all my other items on this project off their line, so I'm going to move that along there a full week. So it's starting on a Monday. I can adjust this so all the other phases start on a Monday as well. That's looking okay. Move my joinery first, fix my plumbing. Now I've accounted for the time on that project, and once one gang is finished on one project, they'll be available for another phase over here, specifically the bricklayers. I've accounted for that conflict just there and added a note onto my page. And I can also see as well that where I have gaps for certain labour tasks, so if I was to come down here, look at my carpenters, I can see where labour is being applied, and I can also see where I've got gangs that are going to be available for other jobs. So I can see here now that in July I have a week on the 10th that I can have my carpenters on another job. Same again, the week commencing 24th of July, I can put my carpenters somewhere else. They're free for a couple of days at the beginning of August, and middle of August as well, they can go off somewhere else. So I can manage those gangs and use that information to help me run other jobs, knowing that I've got them available at that time. Which is also very handy if you need to keep gangs busy, especially if they're coming in as subcontractors, and that if you're not keeping them busy, they may go off somewhere else and not be available when you need them, leaving you with the situation of bringing in a gang that you don't know, and you have to then hope that they're as fast and as efficient, as good as the gang you normally use, or possibly just sit there twiddling your thumbs while they finish doing the last one because you can't get anyone else. So it's handy to have that information available. Once you've got this project laid out, we can then produce a printout of this. First thing I'm going to do, before doing any printouts, I'm just going to save this. I'm going to just tidy that up there so it's not conflicting with my notes. And I'm then going to go to File, Project Save As, and overwrite my house merged, confirm that, and that is now done. I'm going to click on the Gantt Chart window to make that the active window. I'm also going to pull this bar across so it's no longer showing the build phase just there, because I've already got that information on the left hand side. Going to go to my menu again, print preview, I can see the beginning of house 1 and a bit of the beginning of house 2, but currently this is being spread across multiple pages. I can see what page is showing what by using the page arrow buttons on the top right here. This is handy if you have a smaller printer and need to print them off individually. What you also might want to do is force them onto a single page if you're printing them off on a larger printer. Before I do that though, another thing to draw your attention to is where it says your company name, project start details, etc. at the top, and also program titles, general comments. I'm going to close that. I'm going to come to my Progress tab and select Project Details. Here I will go to where it says User, and this is where the text is coming through. So I'm going to say client name there, put my name in, call that build program, program number, I'm going to say 1, author, my name again, general comment, revision comment, first revision, and then text 7, company name. There we go. So I've edited those boxes of information there. See if there's anything else that I need to adjust. I'm going to leave them as is now. Click OK. Return to my print preview. And that information is now showing on my chart. Program number 1, build program, demo, first revision. What I'm going to do now is go to my options button. I'm going to go to page, and I'm going to select force to pages. This defaults to 1 by 1. Click close there, and that forces that onto a single page. I can then decide to print this off on an A1 printer and have it as a nice large poster on the wall, or I can print it off on an A3, have a smaller poster, but now we have our project laid out. So at a nice quick glance there, you can see where you might have some gaps for labour for doing other tasks as well. That there is ProjectXpert and importing from EstimatorXpress and also producing the printout. If you have any questions, please give us a call on 0117 916 7899. That's 0117 916 7899. Thank you.